This is Tell Me What to Read, powered by Booktopia. I'm Nick Wasiliev, and today I'm sitting down for our first podcast in August, and I'm especially excited because this August we are celebrating our favourite YA books. Young adult fiction offers readers a taste of everything from fast-paced fantasy to enthralling romance or thrillers with jaw-dropping plot twists. And so we are sitting down with our in-house team of experts to discuss the YA books you should be checking out this month. Welcome Sarah McDuling, Jessica Paul, and Shanu Prasad. Hello, guys.
Hi.
So it's also awesome to talk YA with you. And Sarah, I'm going to throw to you first. With this, it covers so much, as mentioned, different genres, different styles. What particular genres of YA are you most excited about?
Oh, look, I'm excited about them all. I love YA because it's a bit of everything. But I think we should kick off our discussion with probably the area that's trending in YA the most at the moment, which is we're in a bit of an age of the YA fantasy, particularly the YA fantasy with a healthy dose of romance. And so that's where we'll begin. And I would like to first call out to a fantasy YA duology that I have very much enjoyed recently, and I know I'm not alone, which is These Hollow Vows duology by Lexi Ryan. The second book, These Twisted Vows, Bonds, thank you, has just come out, and I absolutely loved it. It's sort of what you're looking for when you are after a YA fantasy romance, I feel, is there's always like a little bit of a soulmate thing going on. There's star-crossed romance, often a bit of a love triangle, magic, adventure, and all of those things. And this duology offers all of that, but it offers all of that in a way that did not really annoy me, which I feel like it's a bit of a tough call, because I don't love the idea of soulmates. I don't believe in soulmates as a person. You know, like I think everyone has multiple soulmate possibilities out there in the world to find, and so I don't always like reading a book where it's like, you are the one and only person meant for me. It's like I roll my eyes a bit. But the reason I really liked this duology is because it kind of fights against the soulmate principle a little bit. It sort of suggests that, you know, maybe you can choose for yourself, which I really liked. And also it was just wildly romantic. And the other thing that often happens to me when I read these books is that I always support the side of the love triangle that doesn't win.
Oh, we love the underdog. We so love the underdog.
Like, I never pick the end game guy. I always like the other guy. And in this case, the way that I wanted the romance to end is the way that it actually ended in the book. And I've discovered a new author that I really like, because I was previously unaware of Lexi Ryan. I think this is her first foray into young adult. She was a romance writer before that, and I think it shows.
Yeah, I really, really loved it as well. I was very lucky in that because I came to the series so late, I managed to read the first and second book back to back. So I mean, those cliffhangers, they can really, really mess with your mind. So I was very happy to be able to put the first book down and pick up the second book straight away. And I love it. I really loved the main characters. I wanted a little bit more of a repercussion for some of the meaner characters that I kind of wanted a bit more to happen to them. But yeah, it was such a great duology. I really loved it.
Yeah, and I love that it was a duology, and I had to deal with the cliffhanger for the better part of a year, but at least it was just that, right?
Yeah.
There's not like a second cliffhanger, which probably brings us around to
yes. So that I can complain about this one, because
I also like to complain about it too, but you complain first.
Okay, so the next book we're going to complain about, and I say complain with a lot of love because I really, really enjoyed it, is Defy the Night and then Defend the Dawn by Bridget Camera. So Defy the Night came out in September 2021, and Defend the Dawn comes out very, very soon, if it hasn't.
Very shortly.
Very shortly.
September the 15th.
September the 15th. So we're very lucky that we've managed to get a sneak preview, and we've just read the second installment. Sarah may or may not have sold me this as a duology, and I thought it was a duology.
I thought it was.
It's not a duology. It's more like a trilogy.
And
Come on,
so
the previous work.
I read the first book and was like, phew, I can get over that cliffhanger by picking up the second and
But
last
also,
installment.
The first book was not it was a cliffhanger, but it also was a complete story.
It was
and I love that.
It was the perfect
Yes.
mix of I'm intrigued and I want to know more, but at the same time I'm not losing sleep over finding out what happens next. Defend the Dawn does not do that.
No, I'm so sorry.
Yeah, Defend the Dawn is like, I will leave you hanging over the side
Literally
of
on
the
a
cliff
cliff.
by your fingernails.
Yes, I'll give you a little tiny amount of like energy so you can sneak a teensy little bit across, and then I'm going to drop you back down again and leave you there.
Yes.
And the worst part is because you've read it early, you now have ages to wait.
So long.
Ages.
So long to wait.
And can I just say how another member of our team, who shall remain nameless, Ashberry, managed to not tell me that it was a cliffhanger and make me read it. And I read the whole thing. The whole
And
damn
you
thing.
hate cliffhangers more than
I
anyone.
hate cliffhangers, and I never read the books until they're all completely done for this very reason, because it
I'm
makes me
so
angry.
sorry, Shanu.
But I loved it. I loved it so
It was
much.
good.
It's such a
and
good series.
If you, I think it's, I think it actually takes the best of all of her previous, or her other books, and puts them together. Because I really love how she keeps changing perspectives throughout the novel.
Yes.
And then introduces towards the end of the novel always a couple of new perspectives which will become more sort of prominent in the next book.
Yeah.
And so she gives these teasers, which I cannot wait for the two
Cannot wait for the
characters.
third. Yeah. It's
Yes,
gonna
the
be
two
so
characters
good.
that have smaller roles, even though they're very big characters, to come to the fore in the third one.
The only thing I would say about this that I think needs to be well known is that this is not a magic story. This doesn't have magic in it.
Yeah.
So, and that's not a spoiler. I just think it's really important because when I started reading it, I got about 70% of the way through and I was like, when is this girl going to power up?
Oh,
When,
no.
when is she going to be?
Fantasy Kingdom, but not
Yeah,
magical.
it's fantasy, but it's not
And
magical.
that's why I like it more, because they have to actually come up with because when you have a fantasy magic, you can do kind of what like Buffy the Vampire Slayer did in the first season when computers weren't really a thing.
Yes.
Anytime they wanted to like know something, they would just, the computer will tell you, even if that's not a thing the computer could tell you. And that's kind of what magic can do sometimes.
An easy
It
answer.
gives an
to
easy
everything.
answer. Whereas here, like literally Bridget Kemmerer's entire sort of, I think her like point of writing books is to be like, everyone is complex. There are grey areas in the world. There are no easy answers. Good people do bad things. Bad people do good things.
I love that.
And relationships are complicated.
Relationships are
And they're
complicated.
difficult. And maybe you might be shipping something that you really hoped was going to happen, and then you're like, oh, it's not going to happen, and oh, it might happen next book. I don't know.
And then you're like, well, which one? Because you think you know who she's going to be with, and then you think, oh, maybe not. But then you're like, oh. And I think different people will have different opinions on which is the right relationship for the main character.
I kind of hope she doesn't end up with anyone. I really, the cliffhanger at the end of the second book, I'm like, okay, she's going into her fight arc. Tessa, the main character, she's about to become
Her final form.
her final form.
Her
And I
final
really
form.
hope that she's like, you know what? I don't need no man. I'm just going to go and do this. So yeah.
Maybe. I actually too, see, because I had very different opinions of the characters in the first book to the second.
Agreed.
So Tessa was not my favorite character in this book.
I actually agree with that. She annoyed me a little bit.
Right?
Yeah, because I think also because I was waiting for her to power up, I was like, come on, girl, you've got to show a little bit more grit.
I think it's because she was so so amazing in the first book, and she was just like doing all the stuff. But
Yes.
I think that's kind of also maybe good, and maybe what Bridget Kemmerer does really well is to show that like these girls are just like there is no they're not like the only girl. They're literally just the girl that happens to be doing the thing.
Yeah.
They're not
They just
not
step
like,
up. They're not
they step up.
chosen.
Yes.
They're not
Yeah.
chosen.
Yes.
They're
And
put into a situation and then they just do with it what they can.
Yeah.
And it's not always perfect.
yeah, and I love that because that's especially true in Defy the Night, the first one. She very much stepped up to a situation, whereas in Defend the Dawn, her options were sort of removed from her a little bit. They were a little bit more. She stepped up, but she was put in situations where she was kind of outside of her control because she was like, spoiler alert, she was trapped on this ship. Like there was nowhere she could go.
But there were things but she was trapped on the ship, but she definitely had things she could have done and decisions she could have made that could have definitely affected things in a different way.
Yeah.
But there are some new characters in this which are really good.
Yeah, so I think the overall feedback is that we would be requiring the third book faster.
Immediately.
And the good thing is Bridget Cameron is an author that does deliver us
She's
books
fast writer.
very fast.
Okay.
Thank the Lord.
Great, so can we have it next week?
The problem is she's a fast writer and she has several series going, and so she will have a book out in the series that's not this before we get the third book in.
Maybe she'll hear this podcast and go, I need to write the other in a different order.
Maybe I should write a strongly worded letter.
Yeah.
So I get worried because it'll be another series for us to get completely obsessed over. It'll be like, oh my God, there'll be too many series jumping around at once. I won't be able to process it.
That's already the situation.
Yeah, that's okay. But we are smart. We are also smart women who can read multiple series at the same time. So
maybe we'll delve into something else.
Which brings us to another area of young adult fiction that is hyper popular at the moment and growing, which is the contemporary YA, which is heavily skewed to romance at the moment as well. Thank you, TikTok.
Yes.
And one of the ones we wanted to talk about in this area, well, I wanted to talk about one, and I want to talk about two. I want to talk about Take a Bow, Noah Mitchell, by the lovely Tobias Madden, one of the nicest people and best authors. And another very, very nice person and best author is Nina Kenwood, who has a new book coming out. The follow-up to her first book, It Sounded Better in My Head, which was one of my favorites when it came out. Oh my gosh, so good. Go to you. But her new book coming out is called Unnecessary Drama. So which one should we talk about first?
I want to hear more about unnecessary drama.
Let's start with that.
Okay, so I read this book maybe 6 weeks ago, I feel, and oh my God, it was just exactly what I needed. It was just everything about it was good. She writes amazing characters that, again, they're like this main character in this book. She's 18. Her name's Brooke. She's that person, you know how you're in a friend group, there's always that person that does all the things. She remembers the birthdays, she organizes the present, she does she pays for it, she chases up people, she's looking after her older sister who's a bit of a sort of scatterbrain and keeps getting into trouble, and she's looking after her mum, and she's quite nervous about going to uni, which is where she is literally headed to uni. So she moves out of her house and into a share house with this really cool girl whose place it is, or grandparents' place it is, and then who comes in as the third roommate, but the person that she hates the most in the world, her arch nemesis from high school, Jessie.
I love this so much. It's like my favorite.
I feel a bit anxious just hearing about it. I need to read it.
Yeah. And the funny thing is that the house rules, because she's expecting, she wants, who's going to take out the garbage? How do you label your containers in the fridge? And all these things you think about if you're like moving into a share house.
She sounds like my arch nemesis.
Yeah. But the only rule that her roommates want is just no unnecessary drama. So pretty much, I think you can safely say that when you put a rule in place in a share house full of 3 18-year-olds that says no unnecessary drama, what do you reckon is going to happen?
You're dreaming.
A lot of drama.
It's like when you see it in a Tinder bio, and you're like,
red flag.
But it's just, it really is. It really is really funny. I laughed so many times when I was reading this book, but I also really felt for this main character. She had. And at this one point in time when her sister just shows up, when you have that other, like it could be a sister, it could be a friend who you don't really want to introduce to your new friends because you're worried that, or you just know that everyone's going to love them more and think they're amazing and that you're the boring one. Well, that's basically what happens in this book. But she learns lessons, so it's one of those things where even though it's an 18-year-old, and so it can play into that older age group, it's still really suitable for younger, sort of, 14 and up, because there are lessons being learnt. She is, it's not like super explicit. It's not like they're not having like, there's some things, language and stuff, if parents listening to this, but it's not like, it's not like Sarah J. Maas style.
It's definitely YA, but with a character who's just out of high school.
Exactly.
And I love the way she writes. I feel like Nina Kenwood has this ability to just tap into like reawaken teenage Sarah. Like, I don't know how, there's a part of your brain and you don't think like that as an adult anymore and you lose touch with those feelings. And it's not usually until you reminisce with some friends or read an old diary or something that you're like, oh my God, life, used to be so intense and used to get caught up in the little minutiae of every interaction that you have with people. And she just has a way of capturing that teenage self that lives in all of us and bringing it beautifully into the fore, which I think makes it relatable for everyone, whether you're in that stage of your life or you've lived through it. She's just a great writer.
It actually made me want to, like, I felt like I missed that whole, like, experience of living in a share house.
I definitely had that experience.
Yeah. I'm sure it wasn't as, like, wonderful. And I mean, not that, as a lifelong friendship, but that I feel like I missed out by not having that share house experience.
I don't know. They were definitely formative years.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. That I'm sure it wasn't like that, but the way she writes it, it makes it sound like it's like when you read boarding school stories. That sounds wonderful, even though I'm sure it wouldn't actually be that great.
Probably less midnight feasts in real life.
Probably.
And then I'll touch briefly on one of my other favourites in contemporary, which is Take a Bow, Noah Mitchell by Tobias Madden. This is the follow-up from Tobias Madden's debut, Anything But Fine, which I also loved. He has a wonderful way of writing just a really good, solid rom-com that still has, it's a rom-com. It's fun. It makes me laugh. It makes my heart melt. But it also has its feet grounded in some, interesting emotional issues. So it's got all of its bases covered.
Plus, you have to really explain.
Oh, yeah, I'm getting
there.
Okay. Yeah. So the premise of this story is so good. The first time I heard it, I was just like, that's for me. I need that in my life. And it's because it takes two kind of quite different worlds, which is the world of musical theatre and the world of online gaming, and just smushes them together in this delightful rom-com that follows the, I don't know what to call this trope, but I guess it's the You've Got Mail trope, where two people have fallen for each other, but they don't know each other in real life.
Yeah.
And so, so the main character plays an online game, has a crush that they've met through the game, and they're both keep it very no names, don't tell each other because it's online gaming and those are the rules of being safe and blah blah blah. But he's got a huge crush, and then the opportunity comes around to meet the person in real life, but they don't know who it is. They just know that it's someone involved in this play. It's amazing. I can't express to you enough how enjoyable
it's got Netflix written all over it.
It needs to be. Even while you're reading it, you're like, I can imagine the Netflix movie that they would make out of this, or show even. I'd like it to be drawn out over a show. It's beautiful. I really loved it, and that is us sort of touching on.
And it's a standalone.
It is a standalone.
Oh, yeah. Okay,
as are most of the books in the YA contemporary space. They're mostly standalone stories.
Yes. Sometimes you'll end back into the same kind of universe.
Same group of characters interlocking a little bit. But generally speaking, there's more standalone books in the YA contemporary space than there are in fantasy. There's hardly ever a standalone YA fantasy.
Which is why I'm always so excited.
Yeah.
Find one.
Yeah. Another area that is quite popular, as evidenced by BookTok phenomenons like We Were Liars and everything by Karen M. McManus, is the YA thriller,
which is one of my favorites because I love all crime dramas that are fictional, not real crime. That's bad. Real crime is bad. Crime in books, excellent.
To be clear, fictional crime only.
No real crime.
Not supporting real crime. I love this space, and we've got a few really big things coming up. There's the third and hopefully final, because I thought the last book was the final book, in Jennifer Barnes's oh my god, I'm mentally blanking, The Inheritance Games.
Yes.
That's a hugely popular series. I fell in love with the first book. I thought the second book was the conclusion of the story. Was heartbroken to realise that it wasn't. So I'm in the same situation as Bridget Kemmerer. The third one is coming. We've got a prequel to Holly Jackson's very, very popular The Good Girl's Guide to Murder.
My favourite ever.
Yes.
Really?
Ever. It's such a good, that's actually probably one of the best YA thrillers. Wow. If you haven't read Holly Jackson, get on that series.
Yeah.
And we have a new Karen M. McManus that I have forgotten the name of, but I've just remembered thanks to the internet. Is called Nothing More to Tell.
Which I have on my TBR, and I'm saving it. I'm saving it for I know it sounds ridiculous, but I really love reading those kinds of books on a nice sunny day sitting in the sun, which I know everyone's like, no, you should wait for like moody days. And
Yeah, it's
great
the
skies,
incongruousness
no,
of it.
no,
Yeah.
I like the sun and the thing. So who knows how long I'm gonna have to wait with the weather the way it is. So that's what I'm aiming for that one.
But the one we're going to actually talk about in more detail is the highly, highly anticipated new book from Australian superstar author Ellie Money, author of one of my favourite YA thriller book series ever, which is the Sherlock Holmes one. Oh my gosh, every word, every breath, I can't remember the series order, but the Every series is like my favourite Sherlock Holmes retelling ever.
It is definitely the best.
Yeah. And her new book coming up is called The Killing Code.
And I am I'm so wanting to finish it. I started it. When I start a book, I like to finish it in the same sitting. And it absolutely killed me that I had to come to work and do this podcast instead of actually finishing the book. But I am about, I don't know, you tell me how much that, I can't tell. I'm about
15%.
20%. I'm going to say 20. Okay, yeah. Because there's extra pages at the end which are not the book. It's just acknowledgements. I'm about 20% through The Killing Code, and it's so different from any of the other books of hers that I've read, because all the other books I read of Ellie Money, which I think I've read all of them, have all been either contemporary or recent past. So None Shall Sleep, which was her last
God,
one,
that was a good book.
So good. Was set in the 80s, whereas this one is set in the 1940s. So it's set in 1942. It's also set in Washington.
Okay.
And it's set, basically, it follows a girl. I don't know what if I can.
Kit.
Yes, I'm not going to. No, I just didn't want to know I don't know what I can say. I'm just reading the back of the book so I don't spoil something. Yes, the main girl, Kit's 1943. She's a code breaker, living in a school that she was at before, but she's not there as a school girl anymore. She's there as working as a job as a code breaker, and she's with a bunch of other code breakers. They're all living in this old school. And then one night, her friends go out to a dance. And then one of them is murdered. And then
the rest have to solve the murder.
Well, see, then we find out that it's not just one murder, that there's been another murder. So the other murder is of a black girl, because there are a group of code breakers who are African American, but they're segregated because it's America, it's 1943. Mm-hmm. And so they're in this whole other section. So, of course, the police haven't taken it seriously that this other girl has been murdered. And the kid's friend, they just assume it's like a jealous boyfriend, even though they've been trying to tell the police that she didn't have a boyfriend.
Yeah.
It's 1943. So basically, the group of code breakers have gone, you know what, the only way we can solve what's going on and to have police take us seriously, because if this guy has killed two people and in horrific ways, because Ellie Money doesn't write
she goes all in.
She really goes all in.
Violence.
There's a lot of violence, and it's during the war, so there's carvings on stomachs that are
nice.
Shall we say trigger warning?
Okay.
Of things in this book, but it's really good so far. And even in that 20% I've read, I feel like I can imagine myself being there in the 1940s and feeling what Kit's feeling. And she just does such a great job of just very, very quickly putting you into a historical context without having to spend a bunch of time giving you, heaps and heaps of sort of world building to put you back there. So if you've ever watched anything set in the 40s, you'll be fine, basically. She's
a very fast-paced storyteller, Ellie Money.
I just don't even know where it's going. That's what's so exciting about this book, is that obviously they're going to go and try and solve this crime, but like at this point in time, we're just up to the bit where they're just getting them together, and they're basically using the skills they've learned as code breakers to work out how to be detectives.
Which is everything I want. It's like a teen version of Teen American Bletchley Circle.
Yeah,
it's like
that's exactly it. That's exactly it. And it's so cool. And again, talk about I'm really visualizing the whole thing happening in my mind right now, like everything. Yeah. And it just I would absolutely love to watch this on a screen after I've finished reading.
I would love if Ellie Money got adapted for screen. But if you are an Ellie Money fan, or if you're not an Ellie Money fan, but you love the sound of a teen American Bletchley Circle murder mystery with a queer romance in it, this is your book.
Yeah. And it's really sweet, because at the beginning it's just this kind of it's very subtle. It's like again, we're in the 1940s. It's very much like, you know, oh, just noticing how nice that girl's hair looks, or just, you know, having to like, why is she feeling fluttery in her stomach? So it's kind of got this really lovely, even though they are kind of like, you know, again, older teens, it's kind of like it's quite suitable.
Well, because it's set at a time when subtlety would have been
required.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's really, I'm really intrigued, and I am totally finishing it tonight because I cannot wait to find out
what's next.
What the story is, yeah.
And then, having touched on Ellie Imani's Sherlock Holmes books, makes me want to talk about retellings, which is another favourite area of mine in YA. I feel like YA, with the possible exception of romance, has more retellings of myths and fairy tales and classic stories than any other genre. They just go, YA authors go nuts for switching it up and doing retellings. There are loads that we can talk about. I want to talk about one that I haven't yet read, but I'm excited to read, which is Daughter of Darkness by Katherine and Elizabeth Kaur. They're sisters.
So I actually started this last night.
You did?
Yeah.
What can you tell me?
What I can tell you so far is that it is set in what seems to be Greece, but isn't actually named, but is definitely fantasy. And it follows the story of Dana, who is a soul severer, and she is in servitude. She's got 40 years of severing that she has to serve, and essentially every time that she completes a task for the House of Hades, she gets time taken off her tab. I'm very much at the beginning. I'm only like 30 pages in, but that's where I'm at so far. What I really love is that I have been immediately immersed into the world. Like I'm in. It is high Greek retelling, so I would say that if you are not up to scratch on your Greek mythology, you may need to have Google next to you.
Just go and read up on the Orpheus and Eurydice myth.
Yes,
I feel like it draws heavily from
it. Really does. It really does.
And it looks so good, and it's got a pretty cover, which is always guaranteed to get me on board.
Mm-hmm.
A pretty cover will go a long way.
It will.
I've never seen snakes look so beautiful.
Yes, I'm also already looking at tattoos.
Really important to remember the authors of this book, because when you Google Daughter of Darkness,
lots comes up.
Many comes up, including a new book coming up by Terry Brooks. So just be careful, guys.
Yeah, we want the Daughter of Darkness by Katherine and Elizabeth Kaur.
Not the Kaur sisters. We don't think that were the musical supergroup of
perhaps
the 90s.
A relation. We don't know.
Yeah.
That to me is one of the retellings I'm most looking forward to. We also have probably one of the most popular YA retelling series of recent times is Chloe Gong's Romeo and Juliet duology, which started with These Violent Delights and ended with Our Violent Ends. And as a kind of spin-off from that series, which really took off on BookTok and is super popular, probably the most popular retelling I can think of at the moment, we have a new book spinning off from that, Foul Lady Fortune, which is following the character of Rosalind.
I'm so keen for this. I think I'm almost more keen for this than I am for the Romeo and Juliet retelling.
Yeah.
I mean, I love the 1920s Shanghai aesthetic. I was totally there for the vibe. But Rosalind's story, yes.
Because you can just go anywhere with it. That's the good thing, is if you have a character like that and you can just take it all in any direction.
I just feel like this is the book that fans of that series are desperate for.
Yeah.
And luckily we don't have to wait that long. It's coming out at the end of September. And I think we're all pretty desperate to get our hands on that. And then I think this is us reaching towards the ends of the list of books that we planned to talk about. Was there anything else that anyone wanted to throw in as a kind of last minute thing that they're excited about, or thing that they've read recently that they liked?
It's just so many. It's really hard because every time we think about like YA, I'm keep being drawn to books that I have already read and want to reread. So every time I read a new book, by the author, I want to go back and reread their old books. But then I've got the problem of like, but there's so many more new books that are coming.
Rereading is so fun in YA. I'm going to do a call out to some big things that are coming. We've got the follow-up to They Both Die in the End. So that is another big TikTok book. The follow-up is coming. It's called The First to Die at the End, and it's from what I understand, I believe a prequel.
Well, yes, I imagine a sequel is a little bit difficult.
Yeah, well, it's different characters, but same world. That's coming, and that's going to be really, 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 really big. And then what else have we got on my wish list? I suppose it would be madness to have a podcast in celebration of young adult and not at least like touch briefly on some recent phenomenons that have been popular because of TV shows, like Heartstopper, Heartstopper,
Like that
The Summer I
so
Turned
much.
Pretty.
Yep.
Yeah.
In fact, if there are two big, when looking back on this year of YA sales, and I mean, the year's not over, so who knows what's still to come, but from this point in the year, there are going to be two giant spikes, and that's going to be the Heartstopper spike
Yes.
and the Summer I Turned Pretty spike. People just went nuts. As soon as those shows hit TV screens, all they wanted to do was buy the books, which was great for me.
Yeah, well,
I couldn't, there was, unfortunately, the demand for the stock sort of outweighed the supply of the stock, but it's a good problem to have in the book selling game.
Yeah. And what great series.
Yeah, they were both so fun, and both, examples of how popular the romantic YA contemporary novel is at the moment. Like, people just want love stories.
Yeah.
And there's more coming from the
We all love love.
Heartstopper world. That's the best part.
Yes.
That the world of Heartstopper is so broad that more stories.
It is. There's the graphic novels. There's also the novels. Plus, there's a book coming later this year called the Heartstopper Yearbook, and this is so cute for fans of the graphic novel. It's not actually a new story, but it kind of is a new story. It's like it's a literal yearbook, so it's like made to look like a yearbook. So there's extra sort of side stories for all the characters, loads of illustrations. It's like
cute.
a beautiful behind the scenes look at the graphic novel.
But also memorabilia at the same time.
Yeah, we've got so many pre-orders for it. It doesn't come out till October, I think, and it's still like probably more people have ordered that than anything upcoming. Yeah,
amazing.
I just wanted to, when you just reminded me of a book that I read that was a prequel to another best-selling TikTok sensation.
Family of Liars.
Family of Liars.
Yeah.
So I know that We Were Liars, very, very popular. Some people loved the twist. Some people were like, guys, come on.
Yeah, mild spoiler alert. We're talking about We Were Liars, which I feel like everyone's read it. So
I haven't.
Oh. Okay. Anyway, we won't say.
There's a twist at the end. I won't say what it is.
Yeah. But let's just say that, look, I was of the, I'm not so sure about that, because I was really in it, and then I was like, oh,
it's
really?
not my favorite twist. It's a twist you've probably read before.
Okay.
However, so I was like, do I want to read Family of Liars? But I really love E. Lockhart's writing
so much.
So I was like, you know what? I'm going to give it a go. And I gave it a go, and I fell in love with it.
That's one of my favorite thrillers, including adult, of the whole year.
Wow.
Yeah.
I just thought it was
better than the
You've
first
read a lot
one.
of crime this year, so that's
have read loads of crime.
quite a bold statement.
It was, yeah, I just think so. And I think not just that it was a great story, it's just her writing is so beautiful and so evocative
So atmospheric.
of that place and time that I didn't really want to be there because it didn't really seem like a very happy place to be. But I felt like I could
lulls you
understand.
into this. It's richly atmospheric, Family of Liars, and it tells, for those who have read We Were Liars, it's the story of the generation who are parents in We Were Liars. And when you read the book, it's one of those books where a lot of stuff has gone down in the past, and there's a lot of like drama carried over from the previous generation. And so this is the prequel that takes you into the story of the parents. And I'm not a big prequel fan.
No,
normally I'm just like,
not at all.
why do I need to
back?
I already know.
Yeah.
But it didn't matter. I fell completely under the spell of Family of Liars. That was a real highlight of this year.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. So I think, and that one, I like to talk about something that's already out so that people
Yeah, you can get that right now.
away
It has been out for a few months.
straight away go and find something to read right now if they haven't already read it. Because
Yeah.
even if you liked or didn't like We Were Liars, or even if you haven't read We Were Liars, you could totally read this without having read.
You could read them in chronological order. Start with Family of Liars, and then read although no, don't do that because it won't work. The big twist of book 2 will be completely destroyed.
But like we said, the twist is actually kind of, I don't love the twist, so actually I think it's better if you go in reading the second book.
Controversial.
Do what you like, but read them because they're pretty good. And then just to sort of, this is now the last thing that
the last thing.
Let's just spend a little moment for all of those who only like to read a series that's completed.
Yes.
We've had a YA fantasy series completed recently, which is the Prison Healer series.
My favourite.
And I highly recommend this. It gives you all of the tropes that you want from a YA fantasy. It's romantic, it's adventurous, it's exciting, it's just got all of the twists and turns.
Yes, but make sure you do have all 3 books ready.
All 3 books ready. You don't want any gaps.
No gaps
in between them.
No gaps. Clear your schedule.
Yeah.
Read
And
one
just
after the other.
1, 2, 3 done. Yeah, weekends done.
Yes, because the cliffhangers are excruciating.
Yeah, speaking as someone who had to deal with each cliffhanger as they came, I would have loved to have sped straight through that trilogy.
Yes.
But it's great. It's really a prime example of what's going on in YA fantasy at the moment.
Done, yes.
And finished and Australian.
So like tick, tick.
Yeah. And a great way to sort of finish off our epic YA discussion, I feel.
Absolutely.
As we're all fans.
Oh, absolutely amazing. And I love that you mentioned this one as the last one, Sarah, because the next podcast that we actually do will be our spoils and all chat with Lynette that you did.
I had so much fun with that, just asking her all the questions without having to worry about giving anything away. Normally I'm on tiptoes to not do spoilers. This was just like spoilerific.
Oh, absolutely. And I kind of will emphasize to everyone when that episode drops, make sure you've read them because you know how Sarah is with spoilers. We spare no detail in terms of discussion. This has been an awesome chat. Thank you so much, Sarah, Jess, and Shanu for coming on. And as mentioned at the top of the show, if this got you excited for YA, we've got a campaign on right now that features all the YA books mentioned in this episode and much, much, much more. Links to the campaign are included in the description. And if you've enjoyed our show, you can drop us a review on Apple Podcasts, a like on Spotify, or wherever you are listening to our show. We'll be off for the next 2 weeks on production break. However, as mentioned, when we return, we'll be back on Tuesday, the 16th of August, where we'll be doing a show with Lynette Noni discussing the brand new Prison Healer trilogy, spoilers and all. Cannot stress this enough. It'll literally just be entire spoilers the whole way through. But until then, thanks for listening and never stop reading.